Welcome in, everyone. Today, we're going to cover Dynasty wide receiver tiers. But before we jump into it, make sure to like, leave a comment, and subscribe to the channel. Let's jump into tier number 1. So we have the same tier 1, I think, as everyone else. I do here. Jamar Chase, Justin Jefferson, CeeDee Lamb. I think pretty much every single Dynasty analyst has these players as the top tier, but there's always an order. I have Chase at wide receiver 1 for a couple of reasons. He's a year younger than Jefferson and Lamb, 24 versus 25. But more importantly, he's the one tied to his quarterback long-term. We know that Joe Burrow already signed a contract extension with the Bengals. They are not interested in signing T. Higgins long-term. I think that's pretty clear. In contrast, the Vikings, they have not signed Jefferson, who heads into his 5th-year option in 2024. The Vikings also don't have a quarterback, and if that guy is J.J. McCarthy, I'm not confident for Jefferson being the same as he was with Kirk Cousins. Of course, Jefferson's elite, but that's why I have him at 2 and not 1. As for CeeDee Lamb, neither Lamb nor Dak Prescott has a contract beyond 2024, and since he has the most uncertainty, he's my wide receiver 3. But all of these players are cornerstone assets. If I had to pick one, I actually think Jefferson might be the most attainable at his price. I don't know. There's still some concerns about the quarterback, but none of these players are overvalued. I'd like to have all of them on my Dynasty team. They're all targets for me. So I'm not going to say that I don't want any of them. Tier 2, Amon-Ra, St. Brown, Garrett Wilson, and Puka Nacua. To me, St. Brown is kind of, it's not quite in tier 1, but he's clearly ahead of these two guys. I have really no concerns with him. 90 catches, 912 yards, and 5 touchdowns as a rookie. 106 catches, 1161 yards, and 6 touchdowns in year 2. And then 119 catches, 1,515 yards, and 10 touchdowns in year 3. Basically, he's been great. Garrett Wilson is the king of earning targets with bad quarterback play. Yeah, it's hard to believe, but he had 147 targets in 2022, 168 in 2023. And of course, Puka Nacua had basically the best rookie year ever for a wide receiver. 105 catches, 1,486 yards, and 6 touchdowns. Now, of these players, I do think that Garrett Wilson is the most undervalued. He tends to come a bit cheaper than the other two, and he earns targets just like they do. The difference is that he has not had competent or even not horrible quarterback play in his career. Hopefully he gets that from Aaron Rodgers in 2024. Once again, I'm happy having all these players on my team. Don't worry, that's not going to be the case as we get to future tiers. But I have no problem spending my late first, early second round Superflex startup pick on Puka Nacua or Garrett Wilson or Amon-Ra St. Brown. I love these players. And I don't find any of them to be overvalued. If anything, I think they might all be undervalued. That's not going to be the case in tier 3. Tier 3, this is a much larger tier. It's essentially, though, most of them have something in common. These are proven veterans. We know these players are good. Most of these players, outside of 2 of them, we know that they're not elite. They're good. But, we have kind of, I would say, 3 exceptions to that. We have the one older player, Tyreek Hill. He's 30. No one else in here is going to be older than 27 when the year starts. One younger player, much younger, Drake London, who still turns 23 this offseason, who has not really had even great production in his career. And then, of course, there's A.J. Brown, who I debated how to value. He's kind of in the middle. He's been really good, but he's getting older. We talked about him as a sell on one of my recent videos. However, we are not asking if these players are good. We know they're good. But it's how good they are. And how do their situations line up for fantasy success? For example, one of these players, Devonta Smith, just got a contract extension. 3 years, $75 million, plus a 5th-year option picked up for about $16 million through 2028. How does that work out between A.J. Brown and Devonta Smith? It's a good question. I've always thought Devonta Smith is a pretty good target at his price, whereas I talked about A.J. Brown being overvalued on my last sells video. However, my undervalued players. 2 of them. Nico Collins, who I talked about on my most recent Dynasty buys video. 80 catches, 1,297 yards, and 8 touchdowns in 15 games last year. He was the Texans' clear wide receiver 1. Yes, I get that Stephon Diggs is there. I don't think that that's going to change that Nico Collins is the wide receiver 1 on this team. So I would absolutely buy Nico Collins. And the second one, Chris Olave. I think people are just not aware of what Chris Olave has done in his career. Far more than Drake London, who's valued higher. Olave as a rookie was better than London. 72 catches, 1,042 yards, and 4 touchdowns. And then last year, 87 catches, 1,123 yards, and 5 touchdowns. I think people just don't like that Olave didn't get a new quarterback for 2024, and maybe he didn't live up to expectations in 2023. But that doesn't mean that he's bad. He only turns 24 this offseason, and he could still develop into a better player. As for overvalued, A.J. Brown, we talked about on the recent sells video, even more so now that Devonta Smith was extended. And of course, Tyreek Hill. I love Tyreek Hill, but he's 30. Is he going to be great? Yeah, probably. Do we see that these 30-year-olds end up being valued lower and lower as time passes? Yes. Am I going to invest this type of capital to acquire Tyreek Hill in my Dynasty startup or via trade? No. So he's definitely overvalued for me. Now, this next tier, I actually think this is the most interesting tier, this tier 4. Unlike tier 3, where we know those players are good, these players all have some sort of serious concern, whether it's an age concern, maybe, some legal issues, Rashee Rice, target competition, Jaxon, Smith-Njigba, and DK Metcalf, or just talent, Zay Flowers, I'm not so sure. How good is Tank Dell really? Small sample size. T. Higgins, what is he going to look, what his role going to look like? They have some concerns. But I wouldn't mind having any of these players on my team. They're all high-value Dynasty assets, but some are better than others. We look at who I find to be undervalued in this tier. Jordan Addison, I think, is the most undervalued. People just don't remember how good Addison was as a rookie. 70 catches, 911 yards, and 10 touchdowns on 108 targets. 10 touchdowns as a rookie, very good. 911 yards, good. Earning 108 targets, that's very good for a rookie. 70 catches, also strong. Players who do this well as rookies almost always succeed in the NFL, especially when they're first-round picks, early declares, and only 2022 going into year 2. That player almost always succeeds. So, some people just don't see it with a quarterback play. Yeah, maybe the ceiling's not there, but Jordan Addison is going to be a good NFL player unless that talent was not accurate, what we saw. I think it was very accurate. So I'm still very in on Jordan Addison. Of course, Jaxon, Smith-Njigba, I've talked about him as a buy all offseason. And T. Higgins, I just think people don't like T. Higgins because he had an injury during the fantasy championship. He went out early in games. I think it has nothing to do with T. Higgins as a player, nothing to do with his actual statistics, nothing to do with his actual talent. He just burned fantasy managers, and fantasy managers are petty, and they don't like T. Higgins. So I am in on T. Higgins for that reason. He's going to play in Cincinnati for one more year and then hit the free agent market in 2025 at 26 years old. He'll get a massive contract. We saw what Calvin Ridley got. T. Higgins will be a lot younger, hitting the market, so he'll probably get even more. So I'm still in on T. Higgins. As for overvalued, Zay Flowers, I talked about him as the sell on the last sell show. Haven't talked about Deebo Samuel and DJ Moore much. Deebo Samuel, I think that he might be a sell because I think the 49ers are going to work things out with Brandon Aiyuk, which means that Brandon Aiyuk is going to be the wide receiver 1 there, not Deebo Samuel. And Deebo Samuel's 2021 season, to me, still feels like an outlier. 2021, the only year he had more than 900 receiving yards. The only year he averaged more than 60 receiving yards a game. And he scored 8 rushing touchdowns that year. Deebo is already 28 years old. The value apex is in the past. So I don't know about Deebo Samuel. As for DJ Moore, he is getting a quarterback upgrade, but I expect far more target competition in 2024. This was his 2023 line, 96 catches, 1,364 yards, and 8 touchdowns on 136 targets. The Bears already added Keenan Allen. I see them getting Rome Odunze in about half, maybe a little bit more than half of mock drafts. Odunze is a better prospect coming into the NFL than DJ Moore was. It's not close. Odunze is a significantly better prospect. DJ Moore was a good prospect, very good prospect. Rome Odunze is an elite prospect. They are different. Rome Odunze will immediately come in, and not saying he's going to be the wide receiver one over DJ Moore year one. I'm not saying that. But he will make a difference. He's a very talented player. He will challenge DJ Moore for targets. So while I love Caleb Williams, I do not think Moore is going to duplicate this line with Keenan Allen and potentially Rome Odunze on the roster. So if you can get out from under DJ Moore, he's still 27, still young, I would look to do that. Tier 5, just 3 players in this tier. It's kind of a bizarre tier. Tier 4 is really large, and so is tier 6. Pickens and Reed are young players with too much upside to be in tier 6, but without some of the pedigree and with more concerns on the players in tier 4. And Adams is an aging star who hasn't fallen off as much as the veterans in tier 6. But how highly can you value him at 31, turning 32 in 2024? For me, I'm not really in on any of these players. I don't really like any of their values. I'd much rather get the guys in tier 4 or wait for the guys in tier 6. Speaking of tier 6, a lot of guys in here. Diontae Johnson, Chris Godwin, Terry McLaurin, Mike Evans, Cooper Kupp, Amari Cooper, Christian Kirk, Hollywood Brown, Calvin Ridley, and Stephon Diggs. A lot of middle-aged, productive guys. Johnson, Godwin, McLaurin, Ridley, Cooper, Kirk, and Brown are all within 2.5 years of each other in age. And if you exclude Brown, it's 2 years. There's a trio of older guys in Evans, Kupp, and Diggs. But for me, the targets are the ones with the lowest value. Chris Godwin and Christian Kirk. They're still productive, and they're only 28 on the same team with the same quarterback. So people have just dismissed them. I'm not saying that they're going to be great, but I've seen deals where you can send a 205 or 206 for one of these guys, and that I would do. Most overvalued, the ones who change teams, Stephon Diggs and Calvin Ridley. They're heading on to new teams on the back half of their careers, but some people say that Diggs and Ridley are worth more than Godwin and Kirk. Diggs to me is a hard avoid. I'm not confident. He looked not great down the stretch. And Calvin Ridley, I'm worried that Will Levis is going to take him down. Calvin Ridley is not elite. So if Will Levis is bad, Calvin Ridley is not going to be, a top 20 fantasy wide receiver. And then he'll be 30, and then the value will be gone. Now, if you like this tier breakdown that I did, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe to the channel. And of course, sign up for the Patreon at patreon.com/fantasyadvice, where you can get the link to all of these rankings. And you can see exactly where I rate every player at every position, plus rookies. Now, I also have some advanced questions from the Patreon, so let's jump into those. Now, how do you go about initiating, completing in-draft trades? What's your strategy or thought process? Well, my strategy is that I like to wait until I'm on the clock for maximum leverage. And, I'm willing to go to every manager to see if I can get a deal done. I don't have a specific thought process. In general, I love to target firsts from the future year. I think that's the most undervalued asset during a rookie draft. So this year, that would be 2025 firsts, seconds as well, depending on where you are in the draft. But in general, I like to keep an open mind. Creative deals are sometimes the best way you can get deals done. So I don't have an overarching strategy other than being active and attacking every manager in the league. What's the best way to navigate the short running back life in the NFL for Dynasty? Should you plan to draft at least one running back every season? I don't think about it this way. Some running back classes are strong, some are weak. Some have guys I like at their value, some don't. Generally, what I don't do is buy older veteran running backs at a high price. So, yes, in the third round, I generally find that running backs are the best value. I do not like drafting day 3 wide receivers. There's one Puka Nacua every, 10 years, but there are day 3 running backs who make a difference every year. So generally in round 3 and 4, I'm mostly drafting running backs. That's the best way I backfill my running back depth. But no, I don't have a plan of, I'm going to draft this many running backs or this. I don't plan like that. I just like to draft value onto my team in general. What happens to a first-year star like Elijah Moore, whose rookie year performance led to first-round pick demand for trading for him? Now, a few years later, he's chump changed. Is there a way to find these types of wide receivers before drafting them in rookie drafts? Well, if you drafted Elijah Moore in a rookie draft and sold him for a first-round pick, you'd be very happy. Honestly, Yes and no. We wouldn't have wanted to avoid drafting Elijah Moore in a rookie draft. If you drafted him at 207 and then sold him after year one, you'd be very happy. So that's the wrong question. The question is, how do you sell high on Elijah Moore? No to sell high on Elijah Moore. Generally, if a player's not a first round pick and their production as a rookie comes on a limited sample size, I am skeptical of those players. And I'm learning this lesson. It's the lesson I should have learned with Christian Watson after year one. Not the same type of player, similar draft capital, though, similar limited production. Didn't end up working out. Elijah Moore was the same thing. The players who are very successful are usually the ones who are productive over the entire year, every time that they play with no excuses, generally first round picks. But, you know, Amon-Ra St. Brown had a much better track record of production throughout the whole year. Terry McLaurin, the same thing. Michael Thomas, the same thing. These are players who, even though, you know, they were not first round picks, you could see from their production that they were not a flash in the pan. The ones who do it on a small sample size, those are the ones I would trade away. So I would just look at that. And it's why I'm a little low, I think, on Jayden Reed this year. Kind of the same thing. Wasn't a big sample size. Not sure it's going to continue over a long period of time. Doesn't mean I wouldn't have wanted to draft Jayden Reed in a rookie draft, though. That's not the right question. It's when selling. And this is the last one. Unsure if this has been asked before. It has. And being out of the U.S., what is the general thought of Rashee Rice and his charges? Is there a view he'll miss a fair chunk of time or not? I've talked about Rashee Rice a lot. I have no idea how much time he's going to miss. My guess is it's going to be something. It's not going to be the whole season, but it's going to be something. And anything I would say is just guessing. If you're forcing me to just say a number, I'll say 4 games. And that would be my guess. But it is a guess. We have no idea. We know that the NFL process is totally opaque. There's no, real rhyme or reason to their disciplinary process at all. If you told me it was 2 games, I wouldn't be surprised. If you told me it was 8 games, I wouldn't be surprised. But 4 games would be my guess. Once again, I want to thank you all for watching. I hope you liked this tier video. As always, make sure to subscribe to the Patreon because that's really the best way to see these rankings. It's going to be better than anything I can ever do on a video. And of course, we're going to have draft coverage. Next week, we're going to have all rookie content. I'm going to have content Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday before the NFL draft. And then we're going to drop our live reactions starting on Thursday to the players being drafted. As they are drafted, it's going to be very exciting. Kind of a live video drop format. And I hope that goes over well. But until next time, I want to thank everyone for watching, and I'll see you all later.